Glenshesque, near Ballycastle, County Antrim. The chill winds of winter are blowing in from the Atlantic Ocean as John Butler draws a lonely furrow along a bare hilly landscape. The earth here is dark and rich, ideal for the purpose for which John intends to put it, the preparation of ground for a good crop of potatoes. John Butler is no novice. Years of experience with horses and a trophy cabinet full of plaques and silverware won at various ploughing matches throughout the country has honed his skill to perfection. Ploughing match judges know what they are looking for. The furrow slices must be straight. They must also be parallel. They must be the same thickness and they must be the same height. The pair of half-bred Clydesdales know well what they are doing too. They have done it all before. They know the pace at which to walk, so there is no need for the master to hold them back. They know the master's voice. They know their job. Even so, with the shortening day, the team will do well to plough an acre of ground before nightfall. The village of Garva lies 25 miles to the south of Ballycastle, and in the townland of Gorticlochan, with a fine view of the Antrim hills, Gilmer Linton's family have farmed for generations. For Gilmer and his helper, Ally McFarlane, there is a less sedate pace to the ploughing. These 100-horsepower Fords with their 3-furrow ploughs will turn over this 12-acre field before bedtime, working until after dark and late into the night if necessary. Ploughing match judges might not view this as work of excellence. Their tractors are travelling faster than a fast walking pace, but the end result of the ploughs is the same. They cut up the deep-rooted weeds, bury the top growth, and offer the soil up to the weather and the frosts of winter. For several years now, Gilmer has planted upwards on 100 acres of potatoes each season, but for the past 2 or 3 years, with crops good and prices bad, he's somewhat less optimistic about a successful 1994. This year he plans to plant 60 acres of a variety called Nadine, which will hopefully find a profitable market in the fish and chip shops of England. The Clough Vintage Club was formed in 1981 and has a membership of 40. With the help of these members, Club Secretary Henry Shannon plans this year to grow and harvest his field of potatoes the way it would have been done between the war years and up until the 1960s. This Orange N. Fordson came onto the market about 1938. With the threat of war looming, Henry Ford and Son began to flood the market with this particular model, promising to buy them back if the war threat did not materialize. By 1940, with German U-boats sinking as many food convoys as were getting through, Britain and Ireland were faced with a choice: grow your own food or starve. The Ford gamble had paid off. Fordson, that's how the tractor got its name, Ford and Son, were now working to full capacity, producing tractors for a willing and ready market. Farmers, now encouraged to cultivate every bit of spare land, were also willing to take the gamble on this new form of farm machinery. By 1940, Ford changed the colour of the N from orange to green. The reason for the change was that a green tractor would blend better into the background and would not be so easily seen from the air by a German pilot. Before the war, in the mid-1930s, the son of a County Down farmer, Harry Ferguson, had also made an impression on the world of tractors. Teaming up with David Brown, they produced this 1938 Ferguson Brown, one of the first ever tractors to have the 3-linkage hydraulic system still used in tractors today. Harry Ferguson also teamed up with Henry Ford for a time during the war, producing the Ford Ferguson. By 1946, Ferguson had broken his links with both Ford and Brown and had started producing the famous Ferguson T20 at his factory in Coventry. Priced at £325, this versatile little tractor sold well in excess of £500,000, and indeed they are still quite common on farms even to this day. About the same time, the David Brown Cropmaster came onto the market. This petrol TVO model had the clutch and brake pedals on the same side. Being able to keep both legs together, and with a wind fairing fitted to the tractor, the operator was able to keep much warmer on a cold winter day. By mid-April, and with a little heat returning to the ground, Willie Shannon now begins to break up the soil in preparation for the potato crop. With the horses well rested over the winter months, John Butler is opening the drills in preparation for his crop of Kerr's Pinks. The horses are fresh and at times a bit too anxious to quicken the pace, but John knows he is being watched. He will take the same pride here as he did with his ploughing. Most importantly, his first drill must be straight, for if it isn't, the rest will be difficult to correct. Brother Alex gives a bit of advice. Drills as straight as a builder's line was the target when this 100-year-old drill plough was in use on as many as a dozen farms in one season. If you had a machine like this around the turn of the century, there would be no shortage of neighbours waiting to borrow and stand and watch in amazement as this new implement replaced the old method of the shovel. Willie Anderson begins the planting of the seed potatoes, using a bag apron slung in front of him like a satchel. In earlier times, the bottom of the drills would have been filled with cow manure, but by the 1940s and 50s, the manure would have been ploughed into the ground during the winter, so by this time you had at least a clean footing if the weather was dry.
You had to put down every one down up to the manure that was in the bottom. It was all different. We used to just stand up straight, home and throw them, drop them down. You had to put the man down and he would be spread the way he'd come across a lot of time and had a rule and it measured the cuts. Oh, they were far too particular, at that time.
The seed box was also beginning to appear about this time. This system ensured that the back was bent at all times. The seed were pushed into the drill, each in turn nudged with the heel of one boot against the toe cap of the other. As Jim explained, not all farmers were easy to work for. Some would stride among the drills inspecting, measuring and looking for faults and usually finding them easily enough. Although this ground had been given a dressing of cow manure last winter, Alex Butler now applies artificial fertiliser. Years ahead of its time was this 1928 one-horse drawn potato planter. It was awarded a silver medal at the Royal Lancashire Show at Oldham that year. It is doubtful if this Albion ever caught on. It was a two-man operation, although some would have said that a horse could have been trained to operate on its own. Strangely enough, for the next 20 years there seems to be no record of any other way of planting other than the old back-breaking method. By 1949, the Ferguson organisation were making various farm implements to suit the T20 and other Ferguson tractors. One such invention was the bell dropper, and as its advertisement read, was capable of doing the work of 3 machines: planting the potatoes, sowing the manure, and covering the drills. The machine was adjustable. Drills could be made between 24 and 30 inches wide, and the spacing between the seed could be varied between 8 and 16 inches. Every time the bell rang, a potato seed was dropped down the tube, planted into the ground, manured and covered up. After the first dozen or so rings of the bell, the operators would get into a rhythm, and could do without the siren signal. During the mid-1950s, this Bamlet dropper appeared. Similar in many ways to the bell dropper, the operators this time placed the seed potatoes into a revolving cylinder. This device was supposed to produce very accurate spacings, and the tractor could travel slightly faster, thereby covering a larger acreage per day. However, the bell dropper still remained very popular on into the 1970s. For the modern men at Garva there is less of a hurry, for it is the first week of May before they return to one of the first fields ploughed some months ago. Gilmer doesn't intend to linger here for long. His circus of machinery arrived here at 8:30 in the morning, and it is the big man's intention to be on the road and into another field by mid-afternoon, with this 5 acres cultivated, manured and planted. For these men the disc and harrow are but a boyhood memory. The brake and the grubber have long given way to the large rotavator, which could chew up the ploughed soil in one run, leaving it fine, powdery and ready for planting. The only manual labour required is to refill the hoppers with manure and seed potatoes. During the earlier years of farming, most farmers would have grown a few acres of potatoes every year. Nowadays, farming is more intensive. Men like Gilmer, with a collection of expensive tractors and implements suited to the potato growing, have to harvest many acres in order to make the exercise worthwhile. The tractor drivers have many luxuries in the cab: heaters for the cold days and a radio. The local radio station is always popular.
You're in tune with the big one in the northwest, Radio North, and it's John Watt with you on the Country Club. I'll be here right through until 1. Now we're going to have a song from one of the northwest's most popular singers, none other than Victor Gregg, the singing barber from Garva, and he sings a song from his latest country collection. It's one entitled Gene Autry, My Hero.
My childhood and memories I treasure the most, I suppose, where the Saturday afternoon spent at the town picture shows. I worked all day long in the fields, but at night I would dream, and I'd see Gene Autry go riding across the big screen. Saturday mornings I've walked 5 miles or more. 12 o'clock noon found me first one in line at the door. I worked all week long, but today I'd fulfill that dream, and I'd see Gene Autry go riding across the big street.
For most people, potatoes still make up part of the staple diet. Rosemary Kennedy from Cullybackey is an expert winemaker and very knowledgeable in old Irish recipes. During the war years, meat was rarely eaten. A simple, inexpensive yet delightful dinner would have been champ. This is the way Rosemary's mother would have made it 50 years ago.
I would cut them up into bits like that, and then they boil more quickly. But fairly even-sized pieces so that you get the same soldier. Could have kind of in there. Half a pint of milk into this saucepan. Put a good big blob of butter, maybe a bit more, and add some salt. Now it does take quite a bit of salt to really give you the flavour that you would want, so I would say add a good teaspoonful of salt for the quantity of potatoes that we're going to use. Now I'm going to take these scallions and chop and clean them. Clean them here. Do this here. Just cut the tails off them and any ends. these give it the flavour. You can use chives if you have them. This time of the year, chives aren't always available, and these nice scallions are equally as good. I'll chop these up finely. I don't want them too big. Mash these potatoes with my pounder. I'll just take this over. Put this into there. So you just mash your potatoes and your milk up. And it does take more milk than what you would think, because you don't want it to be in any way stodgy. You want it to be really nice, that when you put it onto a plate and you put a blob of butter in the middle, you really get a flavour that's typically Irish, and it's just different. So I would put it in slowly so that you don't get it too soft. Put a little bit more. Just keep adding it. See this. Now I don't add the chives or the scallions until I have it at the right consistency, because you would destroy them with your masher. And I think that's just about right now. I'm just going to taste a little bit to see that I have enough salt, because if there isn't enough salt in it, it tastes, as they would say in the country, worse. It needs just a little bit more, so I would add a little bit more salt. The scallions. Don't they look lovely? Now just mix this through with a spoon so that you don't destroy them, because you want to keep the scallions in their proper shape. Now there's a nice pot of champ, and now we're going to enjoy that on a plate. We make a nice well in the centre, and take a piece of butter, sorry about the noise, a good big blob of butter, put that in the middle, and you have your spoon, and you let this melt, and you'll see how lovely it looks. And the traditional way to have it was with a glass of buttermilk. Now, what more would a farmer or any hungry person want than a plate of champ?
By mid-June, the potato plants at Clough Mills are green and healthy. The next step is to curtail the growth of weeds. Henry Shannon is using this tractor grubber to disturb the soil in the bottom of the drills and all around the plants. The teeth of the grubber are set in such a way so as not to disturb the potato roots where the young tubers are beginning to form. Willie Shannon and Willie Anderson then hoe out the weeds and grass, turning out the roots to dry in the sun and die. The two men spend the best part of a day hoeing, and the field would then be left for a further day. Good dry sunny weather is the ideal time for hoeing, for should the weather be warm and damp, there's a good chance that the weeds would take root again. The following day, Willie Shannon, using the drill plough, moulds up the potatoes again. Any weeds which had been missed by the grubber and the hoes would soon be smothered by the fast-growing young potatoes. Willie Shannon is another man who takes great pride in the straightness of his drills. Since the middle of the last century, the big fear among potato growers was blight. The potato blight is a fungus which attacks first the leaves, and after being washed down the stalks by rain, rots the potatoes growing in the ground. In 1882, a Frenchman named Bordeaux discovered that the spray which he was using to kill a fungus on his grapevines also had a similar effect on the potato blight. This mixture is made up of bluestone and washing soda. The reason the washing soda is used is because if used on its own, the bluestone would burn the leaves. Willie Anderson, using this very old back sprayer, applies a generous helping of spray to each plant. These potatoes will be sprayed every 2 weeks from now until harvest.
You're just taking a single drill at a time there, what?
That's all I can do. That's here, the only 2 nozzles on it. You just stand out at a time. Very slow job.
What would you spray in a day?
I say a good man spray 3 acres in a day.
3 acres?
Just about.
You'd be going right with that thing, you know.
Yeah, but a good man, they do it.
What age is that sprayer?
Ah, it's the turn of the century that time.
Right. Near 100 years old.
Very old sprayers.
Like many of the jobs involving the horses, the barrel sprayer was a 2-man operation, and for the man pumping this was heavy work. The pump was sore on the arms, as a constant pressure had to be maintained to keep the nozzles emitting the fine spray. He also had to keep a constant watch, for the smallest particle of dirt would block a nozzle. Gilmer Linton too is afraid of the blight, and has been applying this chemical spray to his potatoes every 10 days since the potato leaves were 4 inches high. Gilmer's operation is not so sore on the arms, for the big Ford does the pumping, and taking 22 drills at a time, he will have the whole field sprayed in about 20 minutes. By mid-October, the men at Ballycastle had started to harvest their crop of Kerr's Pinks. The potato spinner was invented in 1852 by James Hanson of Doak in County Antrim. This was probably the most important Irish contribution to farm technology during the 19th century, and although modified many times, the basic system remained the same. The digger was pulled along by the horses, a large blade cut underneath the drill, the large forks revolved as the machine was pulled along and kicked the potatoes out of the drill. They were left lying on the ground where they were easily collected. Another invention of the 19th century was this pig's snout digger. As the name would suggest, it operated like a pig's nose, poking the potatoes from the drill. The big problem with this machine was that it was very difficult to keep in the centre of the drill, and many stops had to be made. With so much lifting and resetting, the horseman was sure to have a pair of sore arms at the end of the day. Like many of the horse-drawn implements, the spinner digger was soon adapted to suit the tractors which had taken over from the horse. The speed of the tractor determined the speed at which the spinner turned, for the big spiked wheels on the digger were the source of power which turned the gearbox inside. This potato spinner was made by Boyd's of Ballymoney, adapted to suit the T20 or Ferguson 35. This time the operator could control the speed at which the spinner turned, for the power came from a separate power shaft inside the tractor. This sturdily constructed implement, again from Ferguson, had two rotating spinners. One lifted the potatoes from the drills and threw them into the path of the other. The second spinner was supposed to spin the soil away, leaving the potatoes lying on top of the ground, so that none would be buried. This ingenious digger first came onto the market in 1957. Many of the same folk who had been employed planting the potato seed in the spring were recruited again for the harvest. At this time the workforce was often supplemented with a gang of young gatherers from the nearest school, for at that time of the year, in most localities, the schools closed for 2 weeks for what was known as pretty gathering holidays. Some were good gatherers, some not so good, but by the end of the first day everybody had one thing in common: a naking back. If the farmer did a lot of calculating and measuring at planting time, he was sure to be just as fussy at digging time. Everyone was allocated a strip to gather so that the digger would not be hindered or have to stop on its next journey up the drills. For most of the young people, and indeed for many of the adults, a watch was an unheard of luxury in those days. Asking the time, especially coming near to meal times, was a common question. A typical reply would have been, "It's pretty digging time." The faster you gathered, the longer your rest period should have been before the digger reappeared. In reality, however, the faster you gathered, the more you got to gather. Reallocation of territorial allotments was common, for the farmer knew from years of experience how to get the maximum amount of work out of everybody. If a young person was not pulling his weight or was seen to be carrying on too much, his contract would be over at the end of the first day. By the early 1960s, the wages would have been £1 per day for an adult. 14 or 15-year-olds would have got 15 shillings, that is 75p per day. At Garva, Gilmer's team of labourers have a different structure of payment. Here you get paid by how hard you work. Every time a box is filled, the gatherers are given a ticket. Tickets are cashed in at the end of the day or at the end of the week. A top gatherer working non-stop can earn £40 a day, although the average wage is £20 to £25 a day. With the incentive to earn such a good week's wage, it is hard to believe that over the past 10 years, Gilmer has found it increasingly difficult to get enough gatherers to help him harvest his crop. This elevator digger has a big advantage over the spinners in that it digs 2 drills at the time and doesn't have to wait until the gatherers have cleared the ground in front of it. In fact, the whole field could be dug without driving over any of the potatoes from the previous run. Gatherers prefer this method of digging, for the crop is dropped on top of the ground and not scattered over a wide area. Many gatherers prefer to gather on their knees. Jerry Higgins farms potatoes about a mile from where Gilmer farms. In the townland of Ballylame, Jerry has overcome the shortage of labourers by investing £33,000 in this Kieverland harvester manufactured in Holland. The 2 rollers crush any clods of earth so that when they reach the conveyor belt, called the web, the agitation causes the earth to fall back onto the ground. The 4 operators simply lift off any stones, grass or potato tops, allowing only the potatoes to continue the journey. They start young around Ballylame. The disc cuts off any potato tops which have fallen over, and this prevents them trailing. This machine is heavy to pull, especially on hilly or soft ground, so Jerry has cleverly adapted the tractor to produce 2 power shafts. The larger shaft on top is driving the axle of the harvester, making the whole unit a 6-wheel drive. Many hours of work were done to perfect synchronization so that the harvester and tractor wheels are moving at exactly the same speed. The smaller shaft is driving all the other parts on the harvester. The conveyor belt transports the potatoes directly into the boxes on the trailer. When these boxes are full, another tractor and trailer will be standing by so that the harvesting operation is non-stop. These potatoes, like Gilmer's, are also Nadine, and already it looks like prices are going to be good this year. Gilmer and Ali tie down their load of potatoes in preparation for the 2-mile journey to Gortaclochan, where the potatoes will be stored in a heated shed, and there they will remain until Gilmer decides that the market and price are right. The vintage men at Clough-Mills cling to the old method of storage, namely the pit or clamp. This used to be the easiest, cheapest and most satisfactory way to store potatoes. Big stores and sheds were not so plentiful in the 50s, and the potatoes might well have been left in the field until the following spring. This pit first receives a good dressing of thatch. Straw or rushes were used for this purpose. The pit would then have got a good covering of earth, 3 inches deep, and this would have kept out the most savage of frosts. When the time was right, usually about November or December, the sorting, picking and bagging process would begin. This was always a cold job, although the man providing the power to the potato dresser could keep himself warm, for as he turned the handle, he was not only supplying the power to drive the shuffling screens, but the clattering elevator as well. The ware, the large potatoes destined for human consumption, were shaken off the top riddle. The smaller potatoes, which would become the seed for next year's crop, would fall through and would travel up a separate elevator. In those days, the potatoes were bagged into 100-weight sacks. This is another sharp contrast to today's world, for at Gortaclochan the paper bags are only half the weight of the ones used at Clough-Mills. For Gilmer and his workers, there is usually a break at this time of the year, and an anxious time of waiting to see if demand will force a decent price for the year's labour. The men don't have long to wait, for it would seem that most farmers like Gilmer have planted less potatoes this year, and so there is a good market and a fair price. Ali tips a box of Nadine into the hopper, where a slow-moving belt gradually feeds the potatoes onto another conveyor, which takes them onto a similar type of sorting device as we saw at Clough-Mills. As these potatoes were specially grown for the chip market, most of them are large. The few smaller ones which do fall through the riddle end up in this box, where they will also be stored for seed. The larger potatoes travel along this special belt, where the bars are turning continuously. This constant turning helps to clean the potatoes and also lets the pickers see better, for they are looking for any marks, blemishes or sunburn. Any which are not perfect are put onto a separate conveyor, and these are called refuse and will go for pig feeding. The whole operation is powered by electricity. Ali uses an automatic sewer to seal up the bags. He doesn't have to do any weighing, as the conveyor belt will automatically stop when the 25-kilogram weight is reached. Using the forklift truck, the pallets, each containing half a ton, are loaded onto a lorry. By tomorrow morning this load will be in Manchester, and within 2 or 3 days it could be eaten, although if necessary they could be stored for up to 6 months. These potatoes would not be considered good eaters here. They would be rather soggy, but that's the sort that the English people prefer. Gilmer is pleased to see his first 25 tons of Nadine on its way so soon after digging. The men will have to keep on picking and bagging, for another lorry load is required in a couple of days' time. The last thing you would expect to find in a 17th century castle is a crisp factory, but that is exactly what you'd find if you visited Tandragee Castle in County Armagh, for this is the home of Tayto Northern Ireland Limited, one of the few remaining independent crisp companies. Tayto first started making crisps in 1956. Nowadays approximately 12,500 tons of a variety called records pass through here each year. They are used because they store and process well. Tayto have 25 farmers contracted in Northern Ireland to grow these potatoes for them. Potatoes are stored in boxes or in a storage bay, which is insulated, dark, and at a temperature of 15 degrees centigrade. Bulk storage consists of potatoes piled loose inside 400-ton bins. When emptying these bins, 2 operators have to be here at all times as a safety measure, for an avalanche of potatoes is common and could bury a man and machine. The potatoes are transported to a hopper by means of this specially adapted bucket fitted to a forklift. A slow-moving escalator moves them from the hopper onto a star cleaner. This removes any shoots, roots, soil and grit. From there they pass on to a rotating washer which removes the remaining soil and grit. The potatoes which are now clean are transferred via the screw auger to the peeler. The wall of the peeler drum is abrasive and the potatoes are spun round for between 30 seconds and 1 minute and the peel is scraped off. The potatoes are then released from the peelers and the large ones are sliced in half by passing through a roller blade system. From there they fall onto the inspection table where they are manually checked for any bad or discoloured bits. Here every potato is cut in half so that any ones bad in the middle will not escape. The potatoes are washed again and then stored overnight in a 6-ton holding tank ready for the next step in production. The potatoes are then transferred via the auger to the 2 slicers. These are rotating drums with 8 razor-sharp blades set vertically. The drums are sealed so we cannot see what is happening, but production manager Mr. Robert Brown gives a demonstration. The blades are replaced every 2 hours. Once sliced, the pieces 1 millimetre thick go through a cold water wash. This removes the starch, which by the way is sold on to the laundry industry. They then pass onto a hot water blancher for 2 or 3 minutes. This partially cooks the crisps and removes any sugar. The slices are now ready to enter the cooking pan and are cooked in pure sunflower oil at a temperature of between 165 and 175 degrees centigrade for approximately 1 minute. The crisps are rotated through the cooker to ensure even cooking. On leaving the pan, the newly cooked crisps pass over 2 rising chain conveyors which help the drying process and allow any excess oil to dry off. The crisps move onto an inspection table where any crisps of poor quality are discarded and added to the other potato waste destined for animal feed. Tayto have their own farm. Nothing is wasted. After passing inspection, the crisps move on via conveyor belts onto another level. Here they move forward onto the flavouring feed systems. Tayto produce crisps in 9 flavours: cheese and onion, salt and vinegar, smoky bacon, roast chicken, Worcester sauce, spring onion, prawn cocktail, barbecued beef, and ready salted. The flavour is applied in a powdered form. There is a negative electrical charge applied to the drum and a positive charge applied to the flavour, which ensures that the flavour is taken by the crisps more effectively. The now flavoured crisps have to be weighed. This is done by computer. The computer used here is capable of 60,000 calculations per second. The row bag machine forms the bag from rolls of pre-printed foil packaging, and heat is applied once the crisps have dropped into it to seal the bag. About 200 packets a minute can be made. The bags then pass up a revolving conveyor belt to the packaging area. The crisps are manually packed into cartons to ensure the bags are sealed properly and that they contain air to prevent the crisps being crushed. The cartons are then transferred by a conveyor belt to the carton sealing machine. Cartons are built on pallets and then transported to a shrink wrapping machine for protection and strength during warehousing and transportation. The pallets are moved onto the storage area where they will remain for no more than 1 week The crisps are rotated for distribution in strict date order. Just as farming methods have changed over the years, people's eating habits have also changed. Indian food and kebab houses are now a common sight in most big towns, and for young people these days, ordering a kebab would be just as natural as ordering a fish and chip would have been in their father's young days. In spite of opposition from all corners of the globe, the traditional fish and chip shop is still the most common fast food. Ernest Bustard took over the flash-in-the-pan carry-out in Ballymoney in 1987. With a dedicated staff of 20, Ernest has worked hard to provide the public with excellent fish and chips. All the hard work has been worthwhile, for in 1994 he won the coveted title of Northern Ireland's Fish and Chip Shop of the Year. Chips are cut freshly here each morning. Recently, in addition to the various fast foods, has been the baked potato, which is proving popular. Fillings include coleslaw, cheese, beans, curry sauce and butter. Other people, however, prefer the more traditional fare. Fadge or potato bread is another well-known Irish recipe, and here Rosemary demonstrates her method. The potatoes are boiled in the same way as for the champ we saw earlier.
Right, now I'm just going to take my potatoes and I'm going to put them into this masher, which is an old-fashioned masher that belonged to my mother. And I'll do it right. And the thrill of this was always seeing the potatoes coming out. So you just squeeze the potatoes out onto the flour, and I'll be using about a pound of flour, a pound of potatoes and about 4 ounces of flour. Now I'll add some salt, so enough salt, and then I just knead the flour into the potatoes. And the potatoes are nice and warm, so they're nice and pliable and easy to work with. You can actually make potato bread from cold potatoes, but they're not nearly as nice to work with. And you don't add too much flour, because if you do, you make your potato bread stodgy. So I'll just take another little bit of flour now to put on my board. And I don't like them too big. Some people like big ones, but I think that they're certainly easier to handle if you make them small. Now I would just pat them out with my fingers. You can use a rolling pin, but I think this is the nice feel of it. It's worth it just doing it with your fingers. And it goes out easily anyway. Pop a little flour onto a hot griddle and cut your potato bread in 4. My mother always did this, and I think this was to let the air out so that they didn't burst. You will see that they can easily burst, and then just pop them onto the griddle to cook. Mummy used to always say that was when you knew they were ready, whenever they filled up with steam right inside, you see. Okay, these farms are ready now. They have risen up, and I just puncture them to let the steam out. And they're ready whenever we're... And I put them onto a tea towel or a clean cloth and cover them up. See, this one is still nice and fat. And there's our potato bread. You can eat it either hot or cold hot with lashings of butter on it, and it's lovely. Now there's nothing nicer than a piece of warm potato bread with a nice piece of butter, lashings of butter. Look at that, doesn't it look wonderful? Here you are, John, enjoy that.
Along with blight, the biggest destroyer of potatoes is frost. So how then can there be frozen chips? A visit to Ballymoney Foods should provide us with the answer. Ballymoney Foods began operations in 1973 on the outskirts of the County Antrim town, and like Tato Crisps, rely on the local farmers to supply their demand for potatoes. Quality chips need quality raw materials, and the variety of potatoes used here is Pentland Dell. Handling is made easier and much more efficient by the use of the half-ton boxes from farm to factory. The forklift truck removes a great deal of the backache once associated with the potatoes. Farmers are responsible for delivery, and practically all are brought to the factory by the growers themselves. Approximately 12,500 tonnes of potato come here each year, the same amount used by Tato each season. On arrival at the factory, the first inspection is for dry matter. This check determines how the potatoes will react to the processes which they are about to go through. If levels are too high or too low, they will not be suitable, and that will mean a speedy return to the farm. The marketplace is highly competitive, so every step must be taken to ensure that the housewife is buying a quality product. Last year, an estimated 130,000 tonnes of frozen chips were imported from Holland to Northern Ireland. Many would say that these chips could and indeed should have been grown and processed here. After passing the inspector, the next step is to remove excess soil. The weather at harvesting time this year was good, so the potatoes are fairly clean. After the cleaning roller, it's into the water for a good wash. After washing and peeling, it is inspection time once again. Obvious blemishes are removed, and tubers which are very large are cut in half. The plant here employs 50, and their dedication is a vital element in the success story of recent years. After a visit to the chipper, the product assumes its final shape, but there is still a long way to go before it is ready to satisfy the demand for convenience food. For that is what the whole business is about. At this stage there is another inspection. Any imperfections are quickly spotted and removed, and now the chips are ready to be blanched. As we stated earlier, potatoes cannot be frozen in their raw state, hence the partial cooking process. The term frozen potatoes is a contradiction, for sub-zero temperatures would simply leave them as soggy pulp, unfit for consumption. It's through the fryer next, and now partially boiled and fried, the next destination is the freezer. The operation at Ballymoney has been carefully developed under the direction of a board comprising business executives and farmers. There has been steady expansion and modernisation, but always with a close eye on the purse strings, never losing sight of the economics, as they affect every facet of the business from field to freezer. The chips enter the freezer, where they will remain for 6 or 7 minutes. The frozen chips now fall into a box, which, when full, will be taken by the forklift and transported to the packing area. Another thorough inspection follows, and the frozen chips are on their way for the next stage of the journey. It takes about 1 hour from the time the potatoes enter the roller cleaner until the final product is packed. Weighing and packing is very similar to the process we saw at Tandragee. Again, this is a highly automated business with a throughput of 35 tonnes per day. These machines turn out 26 5-pound packs every minute. That adds up to a lot of chips, but then a lot of chips are consumed. The company is expanding its retail outlet, and whilst the home market remains the cornerstone, the Republic of Ireland and the Scottish market are on the increase. The shopping basket, whether at home or abroad, is the final destination. From a humble beginning, the potato is now eaten all over the world. In the 400 years since the days of Drake and Raleigh and the appearance of the potato on our shores, it still forms the major part of our staple diet. Whether eaten in chips, mashed, boiled, roast or fried, the potato continues to be enjoyed by generation after generation.